All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to unpack a really powerful idea from our source material. A single, kind of radical principle for solving just about any problem you can think of.
You ever feel like you're just overwhelmed, constantly fighting battles on all fronts? Well, what if the answer isn't to fight harder? The source we're looking at today suggests the solution is actually to stop fighting altogether and just change where you're looking.
So, to find a solution that works for everything, we first have to ask, what's the one problem that's behind all our other problems? Our source material argues that all our troubles, believe it or not, share the exact same root.
And here's the big diagnosis. The problem isn't the situation itself, it's the feeling underneath. Think about it. Poverty is just a lack of money. Sickness, a lack of health. Every single issue we face comes from this consciousness, this awareness that something is missing.
And this is where the source gets really direct. It points to one specific feeling that fuels this whole sense of lack. It calls the feeling of inferiority the great curse of the human race, because it's what keeps people stuck, feeling defeated, and prevents them from becoming that grander, more glorious person they were meant to be.
Okay, so if the problem is a consciousness of lack, fueled by inferiority, what's the solution? Well, this is where we get a directive that sounds almost too simple, but it's incredibly powerful.
And there it is. That's the central command of this entire philosophy. It's not about analyzing your problem or fighting it or even really understanding it. It's about yanking it out of your consciousness and replacing it with one single all-powerful thought.
Now, the source clears up a tricky concept here. When you hear about a jealous God, it can sound a little, well, human, right? But it's not talking about a petty emotion. It's a metaphor for a principle. This higher power, this idea of good, demands to be number one in your thoughts, pushing everything else, especially your problems, out of the way.
And this is probably the best way to think about the strategy. You don't waste your energy fighting the darkness. That's the problem, the lack, the fear. Instead, you just introduce light. You simply replace the problem in your mind with the thought of God, and the darkness, well, it just isn't there anymore.
Okay, that's the big idea. But what does this look like in practice? How do we actually do this day to day? Well, the source breaks it down into a really practical, repeatable process.
Here it is in 3 steps. First, you surrender. You stop wrestling with the issue, stop spinning your wheels, you just let go of your anxieties about it. Second, you actively clear a mental space. You literally push the problem out of your focus. And third, you fill that new, empty space by affirming what you do want, speaking as if you know it's already a done deal.
So, think of it like this. It's a partnership. Your job isn't to figure out how it's all going to work out. Your only job is to create the mental mold, that clear pattern of what you desire, and hold on to it with absolute faith. The source says God's part is to then come in and fill that mold with reality.
All right, so let's get into some real-world examples. How does this one single principle actually apply to different kinds of common problems we all face?
Let's say there's someone in your life who just drives you crazy. The advice here is pretty radical. Stop trying to like them. Seriously, stop focusing on their annoying habits. Instead, when you think of them, you consciously block out their personality and put your focus only on the divine presence. You literally replace the person with the principle.
Or how about this one, the habit of criticizing or finding fault? The moment you feel that impulse bubbling up, the instruction is to just stop it cold. Don't say it. Don't even think it. Instead, you actively look for one little piece of good in that person or situation and praise that. You're replacing a negative impulse with a positive action.
This is a big one for a lot of people, the fear of inheriting negative family traits, whether it's a health issue or a personality quirk. The source says you can override that fear with a powerful declaration. You're not denying biology, you're just affirming a higher spiritual inheritance that you choose to believe is more powerful.
But when you really get down to it, this whole practice isn't just about fixing things on the outside. The source argues it leads to a profound fundamental shift in who you actually believe you are.
So here's why it works. It's based on this incredibly simple psychological truth. Your mind, and because of that, your reality, operates based on the blueprint you give it of yourself. If your self-concept is one of weakness and limitation, well, that's exactly how you'll act and what you'll experience.
So the source gives us this picture of 2 versions of you. On one hand, there's what it calls the old man. That's the limited self, full of inferiority, the everyday John Doe.
But then there's the new man, the real, divine self that the Source calls the Christ within. This version is victorious, dauntless, fearless. The whole goal is to consciously put off that old identity and put on the new one.
And when you do that, solving your problems becomes almost a side effect. You see, the real work, the true goal of this entire practice, is to consciously and deliberately change the mental model you have of yourself from a limited person to a powerful one.
And that leaves us with a final and maybe the most important question. If your mind acts under its own conception of itself and your life is just a reflection of that, what model are you currently holding of you? And more importantly, what model are you going to choose to hold from this moment on?